My name is Emily Carter, and for 15 years I was the invisible force behind a man everyone else saw as a self-made success. From the outside, our life looked like a glossy magazine spread. The white brick colonial house in Connecticut, the sleek black Tesla, the smiling photos of us at charity galas. But behind the photos was me, sleepless, unpaid, and slowly fading because I believed in my husband, Mark, more than I believed in myself. When Mark and I first met, he was a restless MBA graduate with big ideas and a battered Ford Escape. I was working as a marketing coordinator at a small firm. He used to say, "Emily, one day I'll build something that matters. Something people will remember." His conviction was magnetic. I still remember the way his eyes lit up when he sketched ideas on diner napkins, half-formed business plans about digital supply chains and automation. I had no idea then how much those napkins would cost me. In the early days of his startup, Carter Logistics, we worked out of our living room. He did sales calls from our couch. I handled everything else, branding, social media, customer outreach, and even his bookkeeping after coming home from my own 9-to-5 job. We lived on takeout and coffee, counting every penny. He promised, "Once this takes off, we'll be partners. 50-50. I'll make it up to you." I wanted to believe him. I did believe him. By the third year, Carter Logistics had grown enough for Mark to rent a small office and hire 2 employees. I quit my marketing job at his insistence. "It's time, Em. We're building something together," and threw myself full-time into the company. I negotiated supplier contracts, built the client pipeline, and rebranded the website. The company's profits doubled, then tripled. But on paper, everything, the shares, the accounts, remained solely in Mark's name. I told myself it was temporary. "We're married," he said. "What's mine is yours." I ignored the unease curling in my gut. The turning point came 5 years later at a high-profile logistics summit in Chicago. Mark had been invited to speak. I sat in the audience, proud but strangely invisible, as he described the origins of the company. He said, "It all started with me, a laptop and a dream." He didn't mention me once. Not once. Afterward, at the cocktail reception, an investor asked me what I did. When I said, "I run operations," Mark cut in with a laugh. "She helps me out sometimes." His tone, dismissive, proprietary, felt like a slap. That night in the hotel room, I confronted him. "Why did you say that?" "Helps me out. I'm your partner." He was pouring himself scotch. Don't make a scene. It's just business talk. People want to see one clear leader. It's strategy." "Strategy? Or ego?" I shot back. He turned jaw tight. "Don't start. We're on the same team." But I felt the team cracking. Over the next 2 years, the gap between us widened. Mark spent longer hours at the office. Business dinners became more frequent than overnight trips. He started dressing differently, Italian suits, polished cufflinks. He hired a new executive assistant, Vanessa, a statuesque brunette with a LinkedIn full of luxury brand internships. At first, I told myself I was imagining the glances, the 2 casual laughs between them. I buried myself in work, convincing myself that if I just kept everything running smoothly, the old Mark, the one who sketched on napkins, would come back. Then one Tuesday afternoon, while updating invoices, I accidentally opened an email thread between Mark and Vanessa. My stomach clenched. It wasn't explicit, but the subtext was unmistakable. Weekend plans in Napa, hotel confirmations. My hands shook as I scrolled. That evening, when Mark came home, I was waiting at the kitchen island. "Who's paying for your Napa getaway?" asked, my voice brittle. He blinked. "What are you talking about?" "Don't lie to me, Mark. I saw the emails." Silence. Then he sighed, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "Emily, you're overreacting. Vanessa is an asset to the company. We're entertaining clients. Clients don't require hotel rooms for 2. His face hardened. "You're being paranoid." But I wasn't. 2 weeks later, he moved out under the pretense of needing space. The truth surfaced in the local business journal. Mark Carter spotted at a charity gala with Carter Logistics COO Vanessa Blake.
Coup.
The title I'd effectively held for years, now given to her. I felt hollow. Not just because he had left me for another woman, but because everything I had built, my sweat, my hours, my ideas, was now being paraded as theirs. My name was erased from the company website. The email address I had used for 8 years was deactivated overnight. Friends urged me to lawyer up, but our prenup, something I had signed when Mark was broke and charming, left me with almost nothing. He had been careful, very careful. For weeks, I drifted. Our once bustling home felt like a mausoleum of dreams. I'd wake at 3 a.m., replaying every moment I deferred my own ambitions to build his. My therapist, Dr. Hart, told me, "Emily, betrayal doesn't just shatter trust, it shatters identity. You have to decide who you are without him." Who was I without him? One rainy morning, I sat at my old desk, now stripped of company files, and opened a folder labeled Ideas. It was a collection of business strategies, marketing plans, and proposals I had written over the years, many of which Mark had shelved. As I flipped through them, something shifted inside me. I remembered his early words, "One day I'll build something people will remember." I whispered to the empty room, "So will I." That was the moment my grief hardened into resolve. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to take back what was mine, my dignity, my ideas, maybe even the company itself. But how? Mark had money, lawyers, and the narrative on his side. I had knowledge, intimate knowledge, of his operations, his suppliers, his vulnerabilities. I closed the folder and began to plan. Not in anger, though I was angry, but with the precision of someone who had spent a decade running every aspect of his empire. This time, the business plan wasn't on a diner napkin. It was on my laptop, under a password only I knew. And as I typed the first line, Project Phoenix, I felt a flicker of the woman I used to be, the one who built dreams, not just for someone else, but for herself. I didn't tell anyone about Project Phoenix at first. On the surface, I still looked like the discarded wife, jogging in the mornings, drinking chamomile tea at night, pretending to be adjusting to my new life. Inside, every day was a war room. I knew Mark's company inside out. His top clients, his supply contracts, his pricing models, even his weak spots. Years of being the invisible COO meant I'd built the architecture of Carter Logistics myself. That was my leverage. But I also knew the stakes. If I came at him like an angry ex, he'd crush me with lawyers. If I moved quietly, strategically, maybe I could build something that would not only stand against him, but pull the rug from under his empire. The first step was information. I still had old backups of contracts and client lists on a personal hard drive, files I'd saved before my email was shut down. It wasn't illegal. I had created those documents. But using them required caution. At night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, whispering aloud as I wrote plans. Which vendors were unhappy with Carter Logistics? Which clients had complained about service? Which markets had Mark ignored? Each question became a spreadsheet tab. The second step was people. You can't run a logistics company without good operators. Mark had poached Vanessa from a luxury brand, but most of his middle managers were loyal because of me. They were the ones I had hired, trained, supported. Quietly, I reached out to a few, not to poach, but to listen. "Hey, Jenna," I said on one call, keeping my voice light, "how's the new leadership treating you?" A pause. "Honestly, it's a mess. Vanessa has no clue about supply chain. Morale's in the toilet." I didn't gloat. I just listened, filing away details. Over the next weeks, I heard the same story from others. The company Mark and I had built together was wobbling. Growth had made it arrogant. Vanessa was alienating vendors with her luxury brand attitude. Clients were whispering about moving to competitors. The third step was timing. Revenge felt good in daydreams, but I didn't want just revenge. I wanted a comeback. A legacy. Something that showed my years of sacrifice hadn't been a waste. So instead of trying to take back Carter Logistics directly, I designed a new company, leaner, smarter, built on the ideas Mark had ignored. I named it Phoenix Logistics. The logo was a rising bird in red and gold. Rebirth. Power. It gave me chills to see it on my screen. I funded it by cashing out my small retirement account and taking a second mortgage on the house Mark had left me. It was terrifying. My lawyer warned me, "Emily, you're taking a big risk." "I've lived with big risks for 15 years, I said. "This time it's for me." I worked 16-hour days in my dining room, turning it into a startup hub. Dr. Hart, my therapist, raised an eyebrow during one session. "You're not sleeping again," she said. "I'll sleep later," I told her. Right now I'm building my way out. But in the quiet moments, doubt crept in. Was I doing this out of ambition or vengeance? Could I even separate the two anymore? One night, staring at the Phoenix logo, I whispered, "I'm not him." It became my mantra. I would not become Mark. Cold, dismissive, entitled. Whatever I built had to be built with integrity. That principle shaped my next move, reaching out to clients not with smear campaigns, but with solutions. I offered better rates, more transparency, flexible contracts. I showed them the roadmap Mark had ignored: greener supply chains, predictive analytics. The response was cautious but curious. One client wrote back, "We've been frustrated with Carter Logistics for months. Can you really deliver what you're promising?" "Yes," I typed, hands trembling. "I can." Within 3 months, Phoenix Logistics had 3 solid contracts and a team of 5, including Jenna, who resigned from Carter Logistics to join me. She hugged me on her first day. "I always said you were the brains behind that place," she whispered. I smiled but felt a pang. I had once dreamed of Mark saying those words. Meanwhile, news about Carter Logistics began to trickle in. Missed deadlines. Lost accounts. Vanessa rumored to be clashing with senior staff. Mark himself still shone on panels and LinkedIn posts, but cracks were showing. Then came the call that shifted everything. It was Mark. I hadn't spoken to him in months. When his name flashed on my phone, my heart stuttered. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hello." "Emily," he said, voice smooth but strained. "We need to talk." I almost laughed. "About what?" "You've made your choices." "I'm hearing things," he said. "About you. About a new company." "I'm sure you are." Silence crackled across the line. Then, "Look, I know things ended badly between us, but what you're doing, it's not fair. You're undermining me." I felt heat rising in my chest. "Undermining you? Mark, you took everything we built and gave my life's work to your mistress. I'm just building my own business." He exhaled sharply. "We could work this out. Come back. Consult for us. I'll make it worth your while." I closed my eyes. There it was, the old pattern, him offering crumbs to keep me under his thumb. "No," I said softly. "Those days are over." His voice hardened. "Then don't be surprised if there are consequences." He hung up. I stared at the phone, trembling. Part of me was scared. Mark had always been calculating, but another part of me felt free. For the first time, I had said no. That night, I added a new tab to my spreadsheet: risk management. If Mark tried to sabotage me legally, I needed to be ready. I hired a sharp attorney, Claire Whitman, who specialized in intellectual property. She reviewed my files and contracts. "You're clean," Claire said after 2 weeks. "Everything you're using was your work." He can bluster, but he is no case. Relief flooded me. Phoenix Logistics grew. Slowly, steadily. I paid my team fair salaries, offered flexible hours, built a culture of respect. Clients noticed. Within a year, we were profitable. But success didn't erase the ache. Late at night, scrolling through LinkedIn, I'd see Mark and Vanessa at events, smiling for cameras, still framed as the power couple of Carter Logistics. The public story was still theirs. And yet, in the shadows, a shift was happening. Vendors whispered. Clients switched. Carter Logistics numbers slipped. I knew because I still had contacts inside. Then Jenna burst into my office one morning, eyes shining. "Did you see the news?" she asked. I shook my head. She spun her laptop toward me. A headline blazed. Carter Logistics faces major contract loss after service failures. My breath caught. The contract mentioned a massive government shipping deal, had been one I'd secured years ago. Losing it would cripple them. Jenna grinned. Looks like karma's clocked in. I didn't smile back. Watching Mark's empire falter didn't bring me joy the way I thought it would. It brought a strange sadness and a sense of unfinished business. Because deep down, I still hadn't decided. Was I simply going to outgrow him, or was I going to take back everything, including the company that bore our name? The headline about Carter Logistics losing that government contract ricocheted through the logistics world like a thunderclap. Vendors I hadn't heard from in years started reaching out, asking if Phoenix could handle their shipments. Clients called me the smart one behind Carter Logistics and wanted to work with the real deal. It should have felt like vindication. Instead, I felt a weight settle over me. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the chance to surpass Mark, maybe even absorb his company, but it also meant facing who I'd become. Was I still the woman who had whispered, "I'm not him"? That night, I sat at my kitchen table, now crowded with Phoenix contracts and legal pads, and opened a blank page. At the top, I wrote one question in big, block letters. Take Carter back. Underneath, I made 2 columns. Left side, reasons to take it back. I built it. He stole my work. Employees deserve competent leadership. It would be the ultimate justice. Right side, reasons not to. It would consume me again. Phoenix is mine, untainted. Revenge isn't healing. I promised I wouldn't become him. I stared at the list until my eyes blurred. The truth was, I didn't just want revenge. I wanted restoration, recognition, a chance to reclaim my own name from the company he had turned into a billboard for his ego. My phone buzzed. It was Claire, my attorney. I've been doing some digging, she said. Mark's in trouble. Investors are nervous. If someone made a play for Carter Logistics right now, a merger, a buyout, they'd listen. A buyout? I repeated. Yes. You have the expertise, the contacts, and now the contracts. You could make an offer through a holding company. They'd never know it was you until the paperwork was done. The idea jolted me. Me, the woman he'd erased from his history, buying back the company under his nose. Claire's voice softened. But Emily, this is a big move. It will take your time, your energy, your focus. Are you sure you want to? I don't know, I whispered. But I know I'm tired of hiding. That weekend, I drove upstate to clear my head. It was autumn, the trees flaming red and gold, the same colors as my Phoenix logo. I hiked a trail we used to hike together back when life was simple. At the summit, wind whipping my hair, I closed my eyes and asked myself the question again. What do you want, Emily? Not revenge. Not crumbs. Not invisibility. I wanted my life back, on my terms. When I returned, I called Claire. Draw up the holding company papers, I said. Over the next month, we built a stealth plan. Claire created a shell corporation, Aurora Holdings, that would make the offer. Meanwhile, I expanded Phoenix's operations quietly, securing financing from a small group of angel investors who believed in me. They didn't know the full story. They just saw a brilliant, disciplined operator with a chance to acquire a distressed asset. I moved like a chess player. Every decision, every phone call was deliberate. At night, though, the old doubts returned. Was I stealing back what was mine, or was I letting Mark's betrayal define my life forever? Jenna noticed my exhaustion one evening after a long day. Boss, you're doing it again, she said gently. Skipping meals, staying late. You sure this is what you want? I'm sure, I said, though my voice cracked. She studied me. I'm with you, whatever you decide. Just don't lose yourself. Her words echoed Dr. Hart's voice in my last therapy session. Reclamation without transformation is just repetition. I couldn't afford to repeat the past. 2 weeks later, Claire called with news. Mark's investors are pushing for a leadership change. They're open to Aurora's offer. My pulse spiked. What about Mark? He doesn't know it's you. Not yet. But he's furious. He thinks some competitor is circling. We need to move fast. The next days blurred into a frenzy of documents, negotiations, and non-disclosure agreements. At night, I lay awake imagining his face when he found out. A dark, guilty thrill ran through me, but also a pang of grief. This wasn't how I'd wanted our story to end. Finally, Claire called. It's done. They've accepted the offer. You're the majority shareholder of Carter Logistics. I sat at my desk, stunned. After all the nights of work, all the humiliation, all the therapy sessions and spreadsheets and whispered plans, it had happened. I had taken it back. But with victory came a new question: what now? If I walked into Carter Logistics and announced myself, I could fire Mark and Vanessa on the spot. But would that make me any different from him? I needed to see him, not as an enemy, but as a man I'd once loved. So I called his assistant and arranged a meeting under the guise of Aurora Holdings' new CEO. We met at the Carter Logistics headquarters, in the glass-walled conference room I had designed years ago. Mark walked in looking thinner, more drawn than I remembered. Vanessa hovered behind him, nervous. He froze when he saw me. Emily, he said, voice cracking. Hello, Mark, I said, standing. Meet your new majority shareholder. Silence. Then Vanessa whispered, You're Aurora Holdings? Yes. Mark's face flushed red. You tricked me. No, I said quietly. You underestimated me. He sat down heavily. What do you want, Emily? To humiliate me. I want what's fair, I said. I built this company with you. You erased me. Now I'm here to lead it the way it should have been led. He laughed bitterly. Congratulations. You've become me. No, I said, my voice steady. I'm becoming myself. I slid a folder across the table. These are the new terms. You can stay on as a consultant for 6 months during the transition. After that, you're free to pursue other ventures. His eyes searched mine. Why are you offering me that? After everything? Because someone has to break the cycle, I said. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he closed the folder. I don't deserve this. I know, I said. I stood and walked to the window. Below us, employees bustled through the lobby. People who'd given years of their lives to this company. People who deserved stability. When I turned back, Mark was staring at me with something like regret. Vanessa had slipped out silently. Emily, he said softly. I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. But it was something. The day after the meeting, I walked into Carter Logistics not as a visitor, not as an invisible partner, but as its owner. The lobby smelled the same, polished tile, faint coffee, but the air felt different. Employees glanced up from their desks, whispering. News travels fast in an office, even faster when the ghost of its beginnings returns. Jenna walked beside me, clipboard in hand. Ready, she whispered. No, I admitted. But I'm here. We headed for the conference room. The senior staff were already seated, a dozen faces ranging from wary to hopeful. For a moment, I saw them as they had been years ago, fresh, eager, trusting. Then I saw the weariness that had settled under Mark and Vanessa's reign. I stood at the head of the table. Good morning. Some of you know me, some of you don't. My name is Emily Carter. I co-founded this company with Mark. As of yesterday, I'm the new majority shareholder and CEO. A ripple went through the room. I know the last few years have been turbulent. I continued. That ends today. We're going to rebuild together. We're going to focus on what made Carter Logistics successful in the first place. Innovation, transparency, and respect. Hands slowly began to lift with questions. Contracts, leadership changes, vendor relationships. I answered each one calmly, laying out a transition plan. The mood shifted from skepticism to cautious optimism. When the meeting ended, people lingered. One veteran manager, Luis, approached me. I was here when you ran operations, he said quietly. We've been waiting for this day. I felt a lump in my throat. Thank you, I said. But not everyone welcomed me. In the hall, Vanessa swept past, heels clicking like gunfire. Congratulations, she said flatly. Enjoy the mess. I intend to, I replied. She didn't show up to work the next day. By the end of the week, her resignation letter arrived via email. Mark, on the other hand, kept his promise to consult. He came in twice a week, subdued, no longer the strutting showman but a man in freefall. He answered my questions when asked but otherwise stayed silent. It was strange, having him across the table. For years, I had dreamed of this, reclaiming my place, watching him humbled. Yet instead of triumph, I felt a heavy ache. This was the man I had once loved, the man I had built a life with. One evening after a long day, I found him alone in the conference room, staring out the window. "You're doing well," he said without turning. "I'm doing what has to be done," I replied. He nodded slowly. "They respect you. Always did. I see that now. Why didn't you?" He turned, eyes tired. "Because I was too busy trying to be the man everyone thought I should be. And because I could. You let me." His honesty hit me like a slap. "I trusted you," I said. "I know." He looked down. "And I betrayed that." Silence stretched between us. The sound of typing echoed faintly from the outer office. "I'm sorry, Emily," he said finally. "For all of it." It wasn't redemption, but it was the first time I'd heard him say it without defensiveness. "I believe you," I said quietly. "But apology doesn't erase consequence." "I know," he whispered. After he left, I sat alone at the table, staring at the company logo. It still bore his name, our name. Carter Logistics. My lawyer had suggested renaming it, wiping the slate clean. I'd refused. This wasn't about erasing the past. It was about rewriting it. Over the next 6 months, we overhauled operations. We renegotiated vendor contracts, launched new analytics tools, and implemented a flexible work policy. Employee turnover dropped. Clients returned. Revenue climbed. Every win felt both exhilarating and bittersweet. I had done what I set out to do. I had taken back the company I'd built. Yet at night, sitting alone in my house, I still felt restless. Dr. Hart noticed. "You've reclaimed your external world," she said in one session. "But have you reclaimed your internal one?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "You've proven yourself to Mark, to the company, to the world. But have you proven yourself to you? Are you living a life you want or just undoing a wrong?" Her words lingered. One evening I stayed late at the office, flipping through old photos from the early days. Me and Mark at that first rented office, pizza boxes on the floor, hope in our eyes. I realized I was staring not just at a lost marriage, but at a lost version of myself. Jenna tapped on the door. "Everyone's gone," she said gently. "You should too." I smiled. In a minute. After she left, I opened a blank document on my laptop and typed, "What do I want next?" For the first time, the page didn't scare me. Because running Carter Logistics, I was learning something unexpected. Leadership wasn't about vengeance or even recognition. It was about building something sustainable, something that would outlast betrayal. A week later, I called a staff meeting. "We're making one more change," I announced. "We're establishing an employee profit-sharing program and a mentorship initiative for women in logistics." The room erupted in applause. Mark, sitting in the corner, looked stunned. After the meeting, he approached me. "You're turning it into something better than we ever had," he said. "That's the point," I replied. He hesitated. "I've been offered a position overseas. Consulting. I think I'm going to take it." I nodded. "I hope it goes well." He extended his hand. "Goodbye, Emily." I shook it. "Goodbye, Mark." As he walked out of the office we had once dreamed of, I felt a surge of relief. Not triumph. Not revenge. Relief. The next morning, I changed the company's mission statement on the website. It now read, "Built on trust. Rebuilt on respect." For the first time in years, I slept through the night. But the story wasn't over yet. Because with the company stable and Mark gone, I had a choice to make about my own future, one final, life-changing decision. End of part 4. 1000 words. Would you like me to finish with part 5, where Emily makes her final decision about her life and the company, and deliver the twist ending and moral lesson? 3 months after Mark left, Carter Logistics was stronger than it had been in years. Profit sharing energized the staff. The mentorship program drew national press, and new contracts flowed in. I had done what seemed impossible, turned a betrayal into a rebirth. Yet the question Dr. Hart had asked still whispered in my mind. Are you living a life you want, or just undoing a wrong? I thought about it constantly. Running the company felt like closing a wound, but also like living inside it. Every day was a reminder of Mark, of what had happened. Then one afternoon, my assistant brought me a thick envelope. It came by courier, she said. Inside was a letter from Mark. It wasn't long. He wrote that he'd started a small consulting practice overseas, that he was trying to rebuild his life. At the end, he added one line. I hope you can forgive me someday. You taught me more than I ever admitted. I stared at the page, unsure what I felt. Forgiveness wasn't a door you opened once. It was a hallway you walked down slowly. That evening, I took a long walk through the city. People bustled past me, lost in their own dramas. I thought about the young woman who had quit her job to help a man build his dream. I thought about the woman I'd become, running the very company that had once erased her. And I realized something startling. I didn't want to run Carter Logistics forever. I had proved my point. I had rebuilt, reformed, reclaimed. But my own dreams had never been about freight or supply chains. They had been about building, yes, but also about freedom, creativity, and making space for others to rise. That night, I called Claire. I want to sell, I said. Sell? You just got it back. I know, I said. But holding on to it isn't healing anymore. It's just holding on. Claire was quiet for a moment. You could sell a majority stake to the employees. Turn it into an ESOP. You'd still make a fortune, and they'd own what they've built. I smiled. Draw up the papers. Over the next 2 months, we structured an employee ownership deal. Each staff member would receive shares based on tenure and role. The profit-sharing program would become permanent. The leadership team would run the company as a cooperative, with me stepping back into an advisory role. When I announced the plan at an all-hands meeting, the room went silent, then erupted into cheers. Some people cried. Luis shook my hand with tears in his eyes. No one's ever done this for us, he said. It's yours now, I told them. Build it better than I ever could. The day the deal closed, I walked out of the building with nothing but a small box of personal items. The logo still bore the Carter name, but for the first time it truly belonged to the people inside. Jenna followed me out to the sidewalk. So, what's next for you? She asked. I looked up at the sky. I don't know, but I'm finally free to find out. We hugged, and she went back inside. I stood there for a long moment, breathing in the crisp air. For years, I had imagined this day as a moment of revenge or triumph. Instead, it felt like release, like setting down a weight I had carried so long I'd forgotten what it was like to walk without it. A week later, I rented a small studio in a converted warehouse and set up a desk. No company logo, no staff, no legacy, just me, a laptop, and a notebook full of ideas. For the first time in decades, the blank page felt exciting, not terrifying. I started sketching a new venture, not a logistics firm, but a mentorship incubator for women entrepreneurs. A place where people like the younger me could get resources, coaching, and capital without having to sacrifice their identities to someone else's dream. I named it True North. As I typed the first line of the business plan, a wave of calm settled over me. This wasn't about Mark anymore. It wasn't even about Carter Logistics. It was about building something I truly wanted. A month later, a business magazine ran a feature. Emily Carter, the woman who took back her company and gave it away. The article went viral. People wrote to me from all over, saying the story had given them courage to leave bad partnerships, to claim credit for their work, to start over. One email stood out. It was from a young woman named Sarah who wrote, "I've been helping my boyfriend with his startup for years. Reading your story made me realize I need to value myself too." I sat back from the screen, tears in my eyes. That was the twist I hadn't seen coming. My private act of reclamation had become a public lesson. Dr. Hart smiled when I told her. Sometimes, she said, justice isn't about taking back what was yours. It's about showing others they can take back their lives too. I thought about that as I closed my notebook. Mark had lost his company, but he was learning his own lessons overseas. I had lost a marriage, but gained myself. And now, maybe, I was helping others gain themselves too. On the morning True North officially launched, I arrived early to unlock the doors. Sunlight streamed through the big windows, casting long beams across the polished concrete floor. I set a small figurine of a phoenix on my desk, reminder of where I had been and how far I had flown. Outside, the city bustled. Inside, my phone buzzed with messages from women who wanted to join, to learn, to build. I smiled, whispering to myself, "This time, I'm building something people will remember."